talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. This is a very important question today. Do you think children in America are getting smarter, dumber, or just staying the same? What do you guys think? You think kids are getting smarter today? If you so, raise your hand. You're just saying that because of your grandkids. You don't, she's not objective. She doesn't get to vote. So you think kids are getting smarter? Well, the statistics are alarming and prove the dumbing down of America. Listen to this. In 2015, according to the Department of Education, the National Literacy Institute reported 32 million Americans can't read above the 5th grade level. 19% of high school graduates can't read at all. And the average ACT scores in the graduating class of 2022 dropped to the lowest level in 30 years. Check out this TikTok quizzing Gen Zers on basic information. It's a bit shocking.
I'll give you $1 if you can name any continent.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what continent. If I did, I would say it.
What does Y-E-S spell?
Y-E-S?
Yeah.
Y-E-S? I don't know. How the what? You'd say.
What does Y-E-S spell?
West, right? West?
What is Obama's last name?
Obama. Care. Like C-A-R-E.
Obama's last name, the president.
Care.
What's 6 times 7?
6 times 7?
Yeah.
48.
What's the biggest number that you can think of?
100.
I'll give you this $1 if you can name one continent.
USA. Continent. I don't know.
Congratulations!
That might make us all laugh a little bit, but the decline in test scores in America is getting serious. It's all over the news. Take a look.
Millions of American students are falling behind in reading and mathematics. A third of children are missing fundamental benchmarks. Many educational leaders are blaming COVID-19, saying the virus has forced children to spend months out of the classroom where they were supposed to learn those basic skills.
The average test scores for reading fell by 5 points, while the average scores for math fell by 7 points.
Unfortunately, it wasn't a huge surprise. We know that the students have been struggling, and there have been other assessments that have been conducted during the pandemic that have led towards this conclusion.
This is the largest decline in reading since 1990 and the first ever decline in math.
There's gaps in learning now, but these gaps have been there from the beginning.
ACT test scores, which show the level of readiness for college-level courses, hit a 30-year low this year. 19.8 out of 36, making this the lowest average score since 1991. 42% met none of the ACT's subject benchmarks.
Are we going to be able to make up for this? Do these kids ever kind of recover from this loss of learning?
We have to act with a sense of urgency because these kinds of losses are not going to be made up overnight.
Well, Nick Giordano is a professor of political science at Suffolk County Community College in New York and a higher education fellow with the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform. And he says he's been on the front lines for 2 decades witnessing the devastation of our education system. Marianne is a former middle school teacher who quit because she was being asked to teach her 6th graders at a 3rd grade level. So thank both of you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Nick, I'm perplexed by this. There is really a sellout going on, it seems to me. Instead of figuring out innovative ways to teach our kids and close the gap, it's like the system is caving to the least and meeting these kids where they are rather than bringing them up to standard. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment. It actually goes beyond that because you're seeing almost like a cover-up within the education system itself. I mean, basic proficiency levels on average are about 25% of the subject material when they graduate high school. Now, what they don't say is those numbers have been flat for about 30 years, yet we've been dropping standards at the same time. So if we kept the same standards in place for 30 years, the numbers would be far lower and students wouldn't even be making the basic proficiency levels. It would be lower than that. And it really is devastating because these are supposed to be the future leaders, yet we don't treat them that way. We don't educate them that way.
Well, you say K through 12 has just collapsed.
Correct.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I give my students a basic citizenship exam on the first day. I've been teaching political science for years, and nearly every student fails that exam. These students don't even know the very basics of American government, and yet government impacts all aspects of our lives. But it's across the board. It's in every subject we're seeing this failure.
Wow. Professor Nick's citizenship quiz we gave to all of you in the audience this morning. Now, I haven't seen this. Who is the Speaker of the House? That's something you asked the students.
Correct.
Okay, now this changes,
It does.
you know, during elections and sort of thing like that. How do they do with that?
Most will get it wrong.
Really?
If you put a picture of Nancy Pelosi up, they probably wouldn't be able to identify that that's Nancy Pelosi.
Really?
That's how bad it is.
How did you guys do on that? How do you think you guys did? How many of you think you passed the test completely? Got it all right? Okay, you're scared now. You know what? Well, 11.86% of the audience passed the test. 7 people, who I'm not going to call by name, no, I'm just kidding, got 0 correct answers. Not one person got 6 correct answers. All right. So, Marion, what did the administration tell you about how to treat your student?
You could probably count all the 6th grade levels on one hand, and everybody else was below grade level. And because the majority was at a 3rd grade level, I was told to teach my class at a 3rd grade level, give them 3rd grade level readings and doing some of the strategies that you would do with a 3rd grade level class. And it's like, it's 6th grade. We should be teaching 6th grade at a 6th grade level. It's actually in our standards. You're actually required to teach all students in the 6th grade at a 6th grade level, whether they're below or not. There's some things you can do in between to bring them up, but you're not going to bring somebody up unless you're like pulling them by their bootstraps and bringing them up, you know, giving those strategies.
How many hours do you think you worked a week?
Over 100.
Over 100.
I actually calculated to where I was working between 105 and 108 hours from August through February. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted.
Well, you know, that works out with your pay, which is embarrassing, to about $4.50 an hour.
Yeah.
That's what we're paying teachers. And the budgets are low. All teachers get into their own pockets to bring materials to school and that sort of thing. I mean, these are the most dedicated bunch of people I've ever seen in my life.
I spend between $500 and $2,000 on my classroom every year, depending on the needs of the students and what we were doing.
Oh, my God. All right, coming up, Marianne says students have put their hands on her. They put oil on the floor so she'll fall. They've torn posters off the wall. They've taken pictures off her desk and smashed the frames. Also, they can get kicked out and don't have to learn. Plus, just where does the U.S. rank in terms of student performance? We always say, hey, we're the #1 country in the world. So are we at the top globally, or are we sliding down a slippery slope? We'll talk about all of that next.
We've deviated far from where the system's supposed to be, and that's part of our problem. Teachers need to be able to discipline the students. They're either not going to discipline them at all, or they're going to give the student like out-of-school suspension where they get to go home and play on their video games.
And later...
I've just been sitting back here, Dr. Phil. I'm telling you, I've been wanting to jump in on every conversation. First of all, who is going to leave IBM or corporate America to come and work hundreds of hours for $4.50.
Tomorrow, Sharon.
How far will families go for social media likes?
Dirty diaper.
Family pride.
We've been posting a video every day for the last 3 years.
Or inappropriate parenting.
We can't dictate what another individual is going to find embarrassing.
You post about breastfeeding. You hope your daughter looks back at these posts and is proud of them. But what if she's not?
That's tomorrow. Then on Thursday.
He grabs you and throws you into that wall.
Surveillance shows the man stomp on her head.
You may lose your vision. Is that true?
I can't see out of my eyes.
That's Thursday.
I see on Ksee stories of everyday people making a big difference. I've seen remarkable women contributing to their families, mothers and daughters from generation to generation, inspiring change in the Valley. The dynamic and generous women I've met are the heart and soul of the Central Valley. I see what matters. I see local stories making an impact. And I invite you to see it all here every day on Ksee 24 News.
When I was broadsided by that truck, I didn't know where to turn. Thankfully, I found the injury attorneys at BD&J.
BD&J attorneys will be by your side every step of the way. Make the right call. BD&J.
You want to feel important, to be a part of something bigger, something that matters and can help change things.
We know. We felt that way too.
And that's why we joined the Army National Guard. Take on your legacy.
Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Let's fill up on the truth. Rudy Salas is the only Democrat who voted against the gas tax increase. Salas voted against increasing the gas tax. That's the truth. Meanwhile, David Valadeo's helping big oil jack up prices at the pump. Just this summer, voting against cracking down on oil company price gouging. And Valadeo's taken over $450,000 from the oil and gas industry. Fed up when you fill up? Thank David Valadeo. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
If it's time to replace your windows, if your AC always seems to be running, if your windows let heat in, are hard to open, or just look dated, call Premier Windows and Doors and transform your home into total comfort. Locally owned and operated, Premier Windows and Doors offers financing, factory direct prices, and one-day installation for even more savings. Look us up at mypremierwindows.co. That's right, .co. The first 24 callers to mention this ad get a 30% discount and no sales tax. So call now for your free estimate.
I am sick of politicians failing to keep us safe. I will always ensure violent criminals serve their full sentences. Unlike Mark Pazin, who let an accused double murderer go free and accidentally released a convicted sex offender, with crime on the rise, I secured nearly $2 billion for law enforcement. Mark cut officers, then quit his job as sheriff to take a cushy Sacramento political gig. I will never quit on keeping your family and our community safe.
Let's test American education. Who fought in the Civil War?
Oh, God. George Washington.
How many seasons are in a year?
12 seasons.
When was the War of 1812?
1891.
What is the capital of Chicago?
The capital of Chicago?
Yes.
Man, I have no clue. I'll just say Illinois.
How many stars are on the U.S. flag?
24.
Let me tell you, there was not a lot of editing there. We're talking about how the American education system is failing our students. Now, Mary Ann says she was the 7th teacher at an elementary school to quit last year because the principal got support from the district to dumb down classrooms. Now, Professor Nick teaches community college in New York and says his students can barely pass a basic government quiz. Now, we gave that quiz to the audience today, and some of you did better than others. But let me ask you, do you guys feel like you got a good education? If you think you got a good education, raise your hand really high. Okay. If you think, no, I kind of got pushed along and they didn't really require a lot of me, raise your hand. Nick, Are we leading the world? I mean, we're the most developed country in the world. We've got the highest gross national product. We're at the top of the heap in many respects, but are we leading the world in some of those core elements like math and science and reading?
No, we're not even close. So just so everyone's aware, as far as the education system goes, the United States actually ranks 25th amongst all developed nations when it comes to education and reading, math, and science combined. We just declined for the 5th year in a row when it comes to our university institutions on a worldwide ranking scale. It was the 5th year that we declined. And we've created a system where we're just cycling students through the system. And that's become one of the biggest problems because we see what's happening. I mean, we are the wealthiest nation. We're the sole superpower of the world, at least for now. How long do you think that's going to be going forward if we don't fix this problem? And what really is mind-boggling to me, and I can't seem to get a grasp on it, is why don't we speak about it as much as we should be speaking? This should be one of the top issues within the country, and yet most people remain silent about it.
Well, we've been doing some research on this, and here at Dr. Phil, I have what's called a brain room. We have some researchers that do nothing but research. We do deep dives into the literature when we're looking for specifics. And as of midnight last night, of 79 countries, the U.S. ranked 13th in reading, 18th in science, and 37th in math.
Correct.
That's shockingly bad.
It is. And
that's disturbing.
Well, if you look at every empire that ever exists, they all led in education and innovation at the time. And as we're collapsing, you see countries like China that are rising when it comes to these stats. And we spend more. We spend $1.3 trillion a year on education. That's 7, 8 times more than Germany, which is the second country that spends the most money on education. So we're putting all this money in. Where's the return on investment? It's not like we're producing a bunch of little Einsteins out there. And that's part of something that we have to look at. So we have the collapse of the education system, changes in the family unit, and then changes in the mindset of students themselves that have really created problems.
And what kind of changes in student mindsets are you talking about?
Well, I mean, as a professor, why should I have to compete with a smartphone for my students' attention? Why? And this is college level. So it's 10 times worse when you go through the K through 12 level where there's disrespect at the teachers on day in, day out basis. And, can't take away the phones. If you take away the phones, then parents call, they get upset and fights start breaking out.
And you actually feel hostility from your students.
Yeah, there's been a few occasions where students get violent. And honestly, it's not that uncommon anymore, especially in our grade levels. Middle school and up. The fact that they think that they can do it and get away with it is what's scary.
Well, they can.
Yeah, and they do.
Because if you call the parents, they're not particularly responsive.
It wasn't my kid who did it. That's not my kid. They would never do that. And it's like, well, I just watched it happen. So the denial is real. Or it goes to the other extreme where the parents don't care.
The public education system is supposed to be about social efficiency, civic obligation and responsibility, character, and discipline. We've eliminated all three. And then people wonder why it's all collapsed. It's because we went from where we were, and we've created this system where it's just about, the subject material. And we're not even going to really teach them the subject material. We're going to dumb it down for them. Seniors, 12th graders, are reading at a 7th grade level, just so everyone's aware. And we've deviated far from where the system's supposed to be, and that's part of our problem. Teachers need to be able to discipline the students. They're either not going to discipline them at all, or they're going to give the student like out-of-school suspension where they get to go home and play on their video games. Why not just give them a toothbrush and say, you got to scrub every toilet bowl in this school?
No, but that's corporal punishment.
It's corporal punishment.
That's
not allowed to do that.
We're not allowed to do that.
But maybe that would make personal responsibility and students actually think about their actions before they do something again.
Well, it starts with the parents. Anybody else have a comment or question before we go to break? Okay.
In high school, there was a serious lack of structure in a lot of the classes, and I felt like the expectations were very low. I felt like I was getting a second class education when I was in high school, and I didn't actually start learning things until I started college.
Really? Yeah, it was different when I was in high school. When I got to the first year of college, it was like, I've already done all this in high school. I know I went a long time ago, but it was a very different situation. Well, coming up, there are teacher shortages around the nation, and you don't wonder why. And there's a new law in some states that lets people fill those jobs without credentials. Now, when I say without credentials, I mean without teaching credentials. In some situations, it can be just a high school diploma.
We wanted to empower principals. If you want to jump in and grow your own high-quality teacher pipeline, why would we want to get in your way?
That sounds great in theory. Is that how it's working out?
Homelessness and addiction.
If you're sleeping on the sidewalks, you're using drugs, you're actually breaking several laws.
The search for solutions.
If you were controlling this, what would be your first step?
Enforcing the laws, getting people into rehab, not allowing these destructive behaviors to continue. That will have a huge impact right away.
Fill in the blanks.
The alternative is in that 1 to 3 years, they're going to be right where they are right now or dead.
Available on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
Prop 26 is a massive expansion of gambling in California. It would give wealthy tribal casinos a virtual monopoly on sports betting. No wonder every major California newspaper opposes Prop 26. The Fresno Bee says voters should reject Prop 26. The LA Times calls Prop 26 toxic and a bad bet. The Mercury News says Prop 26 would enable reckless profiteering. Vote no on Prop 26.
I'm David Valadeo, and I approve this message.
Rudy Salas didn't show up for work almost 450 times, but he did show up to increase the price of gas by 73 cents a gallon and backed reckless spending that made inflation worse. And if Rudy Salas gets to Congress, he'll be a rubber stamp for Biden and Pelosi's agenda, selling out the Central Valley, turning his back on us. Because Rudy Salas is a politician who only looks out for himself.
There's one thing you should never have to search for: an affordable, comprehensive Medicare Advantage plan like Brand New Day.
Let's find a plan that works for you.
Brand New Day offers low or $0 monthly premiums for services including hospital and doctor visits, dental care and implants, vision exams and eyewear, even hearing aids. Medicare's annual enrollment period ends December 7th. You can enroll in person, online, or over the phone. Call the number on your screen or visit us online.
Let's fill up on the truth. Rudy Salas is the only Democrat who voted against the gas tax increase. Salas voted against increasing the gas tax. That's the truth. Meanwhile, David Valadeo's helping big oil jack up prices at the pump. Just this summer, voting against cracking down on oil company price gouging. And Valadeo's taken over $450,000 from the oil and gas industry. Fed up when you fill up? Thank David Valadeo. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
I'm Adam Gray, and I approve this message. John Dwordy doesn't live here and hasn't done a thing to lower gas prices. I voted to stop the tax on diesel for tractors and trucks, and I wrote the bill to suspend the gas tax. I took on Sacramento to protect our water and our jobs. That's why Valley sheriffs and local newspapers support me. I'm the independent Democrat for Congress.
How many nickels in a dollar?
12.
What state is Utah in?
Canada.
What is the biggest star in our solar system?
I'm not an astrology person.
Just best guess.
Next question.
Best guess.
Best guess. Give us what you got.
I don't know any stars, man. The North Star?
Well, who has the answer to the largest star in our solar system? There you go. Okay. Dumbing down America, it's happening in classrooms throughout the country. Some schools are deliberately lowering the level of difficulty. Now, Emily Ann was a middle and high school teacher who is now a leader in education as founder and CEO of A for Arizona. She helped create in her state what critics call the warm body law. What you're talking about is putting people in the teacher role that don't have the traditional training and conditions, but this is on a short-term basis, correct?
Well, it's molding excellent teachers that are coming in with different backgrounds, different expertise, because we kept hearing from innovative principals and superintendents on the ground that they wanted to train their own teachers because they already were having to, and they weren't receiving quality candidates. And so they said, let us hire subject matter experts. Let us develop training programs that at the end of the program, they have to show that they could get outcomes with kids in order to earn that state-issued certification, because the traditional teacher prep programs were just not getting the job done. So we wanted to empower principals. If you want to jump in and grow your own high-quality teacher pipeline, why would we want to get in your way?
Okay, and that sounds great in theory. Is that how it's working out? I don't know. I'm asking because I haven't seen the numbers on that.
School systems who have taken advantage of this new law are really raising the bar on quality. They've found folks leaving entities like IBM and Raytheon, high caliber career folks who are looking for that second path, and they're giving them the skills to be successful in the classroom.
You think it's unfair to have anyone with minimal training to be allowed to come into a classroom? Well, you did the work. Now they're going to come in and do your job.
Exactly. But part of it is when they come in, and if they're just, just a person that's coming in not credentialed, they don't have the structure and stuff in the back. They don't know how to make differentiation tweaks to a curriculum. They're basically reading out of the book. You need to be able to have the freedom to change things and do things to meet your students' needs, because what's going to work for one student is not going to work for the other. But you don't have that unless you've been taught, and you don't have that for the experience. You need to have the strategies behind that. And if you haven't been, if you haven't gone through the system, if you haven't, learned, then it's not something that you're necessarily going to pick up either. You have to be taught some of these skills.
You think it's working?
We're not just dropping them in the classroom. They have mentor teachers, they have coaches, they have additional training. You don't just sort of say it's day one, off you go, right? It's rigorous. And at the end, you have to show that you're growing students. That's a higher bar than a lot of folks who just have to show that they mastered the content in a textbook, but not necessarily that they can deliver it for kids.
Not every state is doing that, though. Some of them are just dropping people in because there's a shortage. I mean, they dropped the standards to substitute teaching. Just to be a substitute teacher, you have to just basically be enrolled into college. Necessarily, you don't even need to have a teaching or going towards teaching.
But I guess the question is, if it's nobody being there or somebody there in those states that you're talking about, if there's a huge shortage, I don't know what the alternative is. We'll talk about it. Coming up, what the director of the National Literacy Institute says is the most important thing right now for classrooms. We'll be right back. When you say 130 million Americans are not reading at grade level, what are these 130 million people reading at? What can they do in life? What can they read? What can they not read?
Oh, Dr. Field.
Is there something you really care about? Something you want to do something about? A cause you want to join? A social injustice you want to protest? But you don't know where to start? Well, this is the place. Text PHIL, P-H-I-L, at 88500. Closed captioning provided by...
We get to celebrate being together.
Tell a joke, share stories.
What everybody has done over the past year.
The togetherness of that moment.
Just really celebrating each other.
Suffering from sinus congestion, especially at night? Try Vicks Sinex for instant relief that lasts up to 12 hours. Vicks Sinex targets congestion at the source, relieving nasal congestion and sinus pressure by reducing swelling in the sinuses. Try Vicks Sinex.
Coming up at 5, Fresno police donating gun locks to Valley residents to keep their homes safer. And the Valley getting wet, the first rain of the season.
We know Rudy Salas. In Sacramento, we paid him over $1 million, and he skipped over 400 votes. When Rudy did show up, he voted for a new tax on prescription drugs that would have drained money from the most vulnerable. Worse, we pay the highest gas prices in the nation, and Rudy voted to stick us with even higher gas prices. Rudy Salas has failed the Central Valley. Rudy Salas is not for us. NRCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Get rid of that stubborn belly fat and get the body you've dreamed of. Maj Medical Clinic introduces high-definition Lipo 360 together with skin tightening to achieve ultimate body sculpting results. Do a little something for you. Call Maj Medical today.
I'm Rudy Salas, and I approve this message.
I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 31 years old. It's ridiculous how much the price of insulin has gone up. David Valadeo voted against capping insulin at $35.
David Valadeo and Washington Republicans are forcing Central Valley families to choose between medicine, food, and gas. Washington Republicans just don't get it.
Diabetes affects your heart, your liver, your eyes. I have to have my insulin.
Let's fill up on the truth. Rudy Salas is the only Democrat who voted against the gas tax increase. Salas voted against increasing the gas tax. That's the truth. Meanwhile, David Valadeo's helping big oil jack up prices at the pump. Just this summer, voting against cracking down on oil company price gouging. And Valadeo's taken over $450,000 from the oil and gas industry. Fed up when you fill up? Thank David Valadeo. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
Slice fresh sandwiches, pour the subs.
Who fought in the Civil War?
Wait, you said the Civil War? Well, of course, say North Korea and the United States.
What's 3 times 3 times 3?
9.
Where is the Queen of England from?
Paris.
We're talking about the dumbing down of America today, and a mother in California just posted on her Facebook page, when did this become the recommended grading standard? I guess my kid, a middle schooler, doesn't have to work so hard anymore to get an A. And here's what was put up. This is the standard in their school, and it was published. 84 to 100 is an A, 64 to 84 is a B. A C is 44 to 64, and a D is 24 to 44? Seriously? That's not right. It's
a scam.
Joining us virtually is Dr. Ingrid Haynes, the director of the National Literacy Institute, who says the literacy statistics of our children is alarming, and the idea of just putting warm bodies, that's the term it's been given, that's not what it's called, in the classroom is shocking. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, thank you. I've just been sitting back here, Dr. Field. I'm telling you, I've been wanting to jump in on every conversation. Oh, I just want to come hug Marianne and say I understand exactly what she's feeling. But listen, Dr. Field, placing anyone in the classroom with limited knowledge or understanding of how to teach children, for me, is disheartening. First of all, who is going to leave IBM or corporate America to come and work and, like Mary Ann said, work out hundreds of hours for $450? I've been in this thing almost 30 years as a principal, as a superintendent, and now I train teachers. I just have not heard of people leaving that profession to come and teach, where we're already struggling with what we're getting paid.
So what are some of the most alarming literacy statistics that you're seeing that have you most concerned?
We're right now at 130 million adults not reading on grade level or reading below grade level or do not have the basic reading skills. Those numbers from 2015, they have tripled with what we're seeing. And we know why, right? I mean, never have we been in a time where we had to teach all the way at one point virtually and then trying to teach blended, right? Then trying to deal with the social and emotional needs of the children, as well as our own social and emotional needs of teaching. We're just in a fragile moment, right? And so for me, placing someone that has not been trained, being able to provide interventions for kids that are already below the grade level, the numbers are alarming. And then we talk about the parents and their role and what's happening. A lot of parents just don't know, right? And so we have to figure out how to give them tools to best support their children and bridge this relationship between the home and the school.
Let me ask you a question. When you say 130 million Americans are not reading at grade level, what are these 130 million people reading at? What can they do in life? What can they read? What can they not read?
Oh, Dr. Phil, you can look at the basic person as not being able to read the prescription. Just basic skills of doing life. Many of our Americans are struggling because of their literacy rate.
But if they go buy a television or something and it has a manual there that says, here's how you make this work, or a blender or something like that, they can't read the instruction manual.
No.
130 million people can't read it.
And we're at 130 million adults that are struggling, that are unable to read at a simple level.
Okay, we got to take a break. Coming up, a teacher who says she can totally understand why the Great Resignation is on. We'll be right back. You quit teaching after 15 years as a high school English teacher.
Yes.
What pushed you across the line?
Tomorrow on an all-new Dr. Phil, parenting.
How far will families go?
Are parents sharing too much?
You post about breastfeeding. You hope your daughter looks back at these posts and is proud of them. But what if she's not?
That's tomorrow.
Closed captioning provided by
Mighty Quaker Oats, a bowl full of nourishment. They're heart healthy, have no artificial flavors, and for only cents per day, the delicious apples and cinnamon will hug your taste buds. Quaker Oats, a super trusted superfood. Meet Febreze Small Spaces, the most convenient solution to lingering odors in any small space. No batteries and no outlets needed. With one firm push, Small Spaces gives you 45 days of continuous freshness. Easily tackle odors anywhere. Febreze Small Spaces.
Dupixent helps you do more with less asthma and can help you breathe better in as little as 2 weeks. Dupixent is an add-on treatment for specific types of moderate to severe asthma that's not for sudden breathing problems. Dupixent can cause allergic reactions that can be severe. Get help right away if you have rash, chest pain, worsening shortness of breath, tingling or numbness in your limbs. Tell your doctor about new or worsening joint aches and pain or a parasitic infection. Don't change or stop asthma medicines, including steroids, without talking to your doctor. Ask your specialist about Dupixent.
When I first started Ancestry, I had no idea what to expect. Ethnicity inheritance. Nigerian East Central from you. Benin, my dad's side, is 30% Japanese. Thank you, Mom.
I love how it gives you a little bit of history.
Yeah, I feel like reading this, like, these are my roots. There's just still so much to discover.
Discover even more during our holiday sale.
Here we go. Silas, what puts you so on edge about this building? It's the man who runs it. Why are you here, Gavin?
Do something.
As in what?
What if I give you all the resources this hospital has? How can you help?
With violent crime in our communities and the cost of gas, food, and medicine rising, we need a leader in the assembly that we can trust to fight for us, not a quitter like Mark Pazin. While murders in Merced County hit an all-time high, Mark shamefully abandoned his post as sheriff, quitting in the middle of a gang crisis to take a fancy Sacramento political gig. We can't trust a politician like Mark Pazin, who already turned his back on us. The stakes are too high.
An Ohio man is going viral on TikTok for his career change.
He went from a teacher to a store manager at Walmart. Seth is now making $20,000 more a year at Walmart, and that new salary does include a starting bonus.
Now, imagine making more money as a manager at a store than as a teacher. That was seen on the cable news network News Nation. I fear that's part of the reason that we're having this shortage, is we're just not paying these people enough to retain them. Lindsay, you're a teacher in the past, right?
Yes, sir.
And you quit teaching after 15 years as a high school English teacher.
Yes.
What pushed you across the line?
I think there are so many things, right? I think it's tremendously important for people to understand that when you create a learning environment for a child, you're also creating a working environment for a teacher. And you have to hold up and invest in your human capital. And I just didn't feel that investment in the human capital at many of the places that I taught. I was a victim of trauma at the hands of one of my students when I was a first-year teacher. I've chosen other people's children over my own many, many times over 16 years in the field. And I think it's so important that we understand that the investment in these human beings, the adult human beings, is the investment in the children. And it's just not happening.
What do we need from the parents? Because, if I think back to our kids going to school, and they had classmates that Robin and I looked at them and thought, were you raised by wolves? I mean, seriously, these kids and the teachers had to put up with this. And I'm thinking, where are the parents in this? For common human decency.
I think part of the problem is, though, that we don't want to have the real conversation of how the family unit has changed and morphed over the course of the last several decades, where there's many more single-parent households today than ever before. But life is expensive. So even in two-parent households, parents both working full-time, gone from 8 to 6, 8 to 7, come home, have to cook, take care of the kids, feed them, shower them, then sit down and do homework. I mean, most parents don't want to do that. Now, I've been blessed where I have a good job where I can sit down with my kid and do the homework with them. But when we examine it, we have to talk about the failures within our community. We have to talk about the failures in the family structure and how people are abandoning their children, and therefore it's having a detrimental effect in the education system. We have to talk about the bureaucracy and how the bureaucracy has failed the institutions of education, because you have bureaucrats making policy, not the ones in the classroom that know what the problems are. And it really has created a system, in a sense, where there's no accountability. Who's been held responsible? If we have a 25% proficiency rate amongst graduating seniors, why aren't any of the bureaucrats ever fired or held accountable for that?
Well, and what we need are people like Ingrid, who is both. She's been in the classroom. She is working in administration. So we need administrators who know what's happening in the classroom. What are your thoughts on this, Ingrid? Sponsored in part by Bingo Blitz, a new social experience of bingo you must try.
Vicks VapoStick. Strong, soothing vapors help comfort your loved ones for chest, neck, and back. It goes on clear, no mess, just soothing comfort. Try Vicks VapoStick.
Type 2 diabetes? Discover the power of 3 in the Ozempic Tri-Zone.
In my Ozempic Tri-Zone, I lowered my A1C, CV risk, and lost some weight.
Ozempic provides powerful A1C reduction. In studies, the majority of people reached an A1C under 7 and maintained it. Ozempic lowers the risk of major cardiovascular events, such as stroke, heart attack, or death, in adults also with known heart disease. And you may lose weight. Adults lost up to 14 pounds. Ozempic isn't for people with type 1 diabetes. Don't share needles or pens or reuse needles. Don't take Ozempic if you or your family ever had medullary thyroid cancer or have multiple endocrineoplasia syndrome type 2 or if allergic to it. Stop Ozempic and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, or an allergic reaction. Serious side effects may include include pancreatitis. Gallbladder problems may occur. Tell your provider about vision problems or changes. Taking Ozempic with sulfonylurea or insulin may increase low blood sugar risk. Side effects like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea may lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
Join the millions already taking Ozempic. Ask your healthcare provider about the Ozempic TriZone.
You may pay as little as $25 for a 3-month prescription.
Here is CVS Health.
Here, we'll never be told our concerns are all in our head.
Here, we don't think we should pay more than men for the same thing.
Or pay taxes for period products.
Here, we can ask tough questions, day or night.
And here, we're actually heard. And because of that, we can focus on getting healthier together.
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 Here, healthier happens together. CVS Health.
Coming up at 5, Fresno police donating gun locks to Valley residents to keep their homes safer. And the Valley is getting wet, the first rain of the season.
We've already seen some of those showers in the city of Fresno, but look to the north side of the valley. A lot more on the way. I'll have your complete forecast today at 5.
Families are struggling, and David Valadeo is making things worse. Valadeo voted against capping insulin prices, refused COVID relief for families, but his family business took thousands, even opposed raising the minimum wage. David Valadeo, out for himself, but Rudy Salas is putting the Valley first. Salas got overtime pay for farm workers and stood up to drug companies to lower insulin costs. Rudy Salas, lowering costs, standing with us. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Get local news that matters and certified accurate forecasts at the new YourCentralValley.com. Now scroll while you watch with quick access to news important to you. Connect with your community with the very latest local stories. KC24 News is always available at YourCentralValley.com.
Local districts are asking their communities to help by becoming substitute teachers.
Districts are now turning to bring in emergency certified substitutes, those who just have a bachelor's degree with sometimes no educational experience. The State Education Association says those emergency certified can teach any grade level and fill in for any subject.
You're in between a rock and a hard place because you either have a major shortage, but then you have the flip side of it where they don't have any experience with education.
We need administrators who know what's happening in the classroom. What are your thoughts on this, Ingrid?
I mean, I agree with the professor. You know, the dynamics of our family structure has changed. And I think we really got to figure out how to give parents more, support on how. And then the other piece with the family structure being changed, now it takes, 2-parent income, to make it. And so a lot of times, like he said, sometimes that value on the education is not there. Or if it is there, Dr. Phil, they're placing it all on the teachers. And so again, that's where you get that teacher that's burned out. Here it is, that teacher is trying to teach the content, but is also having to teach, discipline and just basic things that you would have thought that that child would have gotten at home. So there's a disconnect.
But what do you do with the kids that don't have family at home? A lot of my experience is with kids that grew up in group homes. One of the students that I worked in, I actually adopted, he was abandoned at 6 months old and no family. So there's a huge generation where there is no family supporting them.
Yeah, and the foster system is terribly broken. We know that. Yeah, go ahead.
I've taught for nearly a decade in many schools where teachers would run for the hills and what we've been going through. But a talking point that I want to address that I heard Ingrid talk about as well as the professor, this notion of like the change in our family household and things like that. I don't want us to act as if like the education system and what we're seeing is like a current phenomenon. This has been going on for years. So it's not like there's some shift in our households that are happening. The education system is broken and it has been broken. And I do not want us to demonize our parents or our families. I know the professor said, you use the language of want, that they have these jobs and they may not want to, at the end of the day, work with their children. The parents that I've worked with are phenomenal parents. They love their children. They love our communities. And they want to be there for their children. But the thing is that we live in a system where they are not allowed to. And we really need to go back to empowering our communities.
What do you mean they're not allowed to?
They're not allowed to in the sense of our economy. You know, just as teachers
they don't have the opportunity.
They don't have the opportunity to. And the teachers that are in our schools oftentimes do not even live in the community. You have to understand the community that you're working in. So many teachers drive in from the suburbs and they go to these schools that are the hood or ghetto, and then they're acting as if they are shocked or confused about what they're seeing. If you aren't living in the neighborhood, if you aren't from the neighborhood, it is going to be harder for you to be able to exist in that space. So I think we got to give our parents a break a little bit. I think we have to act as if like there is some culture shift that's going on. This has been going on, and it is up to those in power to change our education system. If not, it will continue to happen.
But the ones in power created the problem.
Coming up, is this dumbing down of America trend reversible? We'll talk about that next, and you had a comment to start with you. We go back.
Hi, William Devane here. It's the Medicare annual enrollment period, and this year it's simple. 1, before the deadline, call the number at the bottom of your screen. 2, check your zip code for a Medicare Advantage plan with $0 premiums, prescriptions, dental care, and the benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. 3, you'll find out what you're eligible for. The annual enrollment period has a deadline, so don't delay, call now.
I called to find a plan that covers more of my dental expenses.
I call every year to make sure my doctor is still in my plan.
I called to see if my zip code has a plan with the benefit that adds money back to my Social Security check.
I call every year.
Call to find out the changes to your plan and see if you're eligible for anything new. The annual enrollment period has a deadline, so don't delay, call now.
Call 1-800-970-0600. That's 1-800-970-0600 now.
Politician Adam Gray. You pay his salary, but he skips work. Skipped over 150 votes. Didn't even vote to stop the gas tax. When he does show up, his votes make things worse. Gray voted for a multi-million-dollar tax on dairy farmers, a $3 million tax on grape growers, and a massive tax increase on livestock feed. Adam Gray. We're better off without him. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
There's one thing you should never have to search for: an affordable, comprehensive Medicare Advantage plan like Brand New Day.
Let's find a plan that works for you.
Brand New Day offers low or $0 monthly premiums for services including hospital and doctor visits, dental care and implants, vision exams and eyewear, even hearing aids. Medicare's annual enrollment period ends December 7th. You can enroll in person, online, or over the phone. Call the number on your screen or visit us online.
Why are attorneys in Southern California asking you to call them about your car wreck case up here?
What do they know about our communities?
Call them, and your case may wind up on a beach under a palm tree.
Things are different here. We know our people and how to get you paid.
Here you can talk to us, the attorneys you see on TV.
And cases big or small, we put you first.
Car wreck? Call the Curtis Legal Group.
The heavy hitters.
The heavy hitters are the way to go. Call 1-800-LAW-3080.
You wanted to say something.
Right now, there is a teacher shortage, and the traditional pipelines aren't producing enough. So we want to empower those public school leaders on the ground who are saying, empower us to drive forward, because we know what's needed at the international border. We know what's needed in our rural community, and help us to deliver for our kids and families.
And here's the thing, if there is this huge shortage, and there is, there has to be some kind of stopgap measure until that's remedied, right? I mean, you either leave the classroom empty and say, I'm sorry, these kids can't come to school because there's nobody there to run the class, or you do what you can to run the class. I mean, right?
Well, you also have to look at where the shortage is occurring. So the shortage is mostly in special education teachers, and so that's always been a shortage, and math and science have always been routinely shortage because obviously you can make far more money being an engineer working at Brookhaven National Laboratory or somewhere else. So that's always been the case. These student enrollments are going to decline simply because we are an aging society. And there's not as much of an exodus as people think. The problem that we're having is not enough people are majoring in becoming a teacher. They're not majoring in education. And so the question becomes, well, why aren't they majoring in it? And it's because they see the videos. They see the videos online of teachers getting punched and kicked and beaten and cursed at and spit at. Who would want that? I mean,
overall, if you look at the compensation levels for the majors that are available in school, this is not at the top of the list.
But I do want to say that we don't go into this profession for the money. And I want to make that clear because I don't want people to think that it's just a money thing. We don't go into the profession. We have a love of education. We want to educate students. And when we say it's just about the money, no, public service is just that. It's public service. We get into it knowing that we're going to get paid less than the private sector because we're dedicated people to our students. We're dedicated to the classroom. We're dedicated to the system as a whole. It's the system that's failed us.
Well, that's simplifying it to say, I'm not saying it's just about the money, but there is a certain minimal standard that has to be met in order for people to say, I can do this and plan on to raise my family and keep the wolf from my door. So you don't want to maximize that. I don't want to minimize that because I know what it takes to incentivize people when they're standing there deciding what major they want to choose and where they want to go. There's got to be a combination of, people have different kinds of currency. The currency of wanting to be in public service, wanting to teach others, wanting the satisfaction of shaping people. I understand there's multiple kinds of currency. One of them is monetary.
It is.
And that has to be fixed. I'll close this out by saying, parents, plug in, ask what you can do, and find out what's going on. You can't be involved if you don't know what's going on. I want to thank all of my guests today. For more information about this episode, or if you'd like to share your story online, then just go to drphil.com. And just because we're done here on stage, our conversation from earlier will continue on Facebook, YouTube, drphil.com, so you can head over there to hear more about today's topic. If you want to add your voice to the conversation, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you're in the LA area, or you plan to be, we'd love to have you join us here on stage in our studio audience. Just go to drphil.com, click on Be Part of the Audience for all the details. And don't forget to check out my podcast, Fill in the Blanks. This week, I continue my conversation with Michael Schellenberger, author of San Francisco, Why Progressives Ruin Cities. He says he believes that America's approach to drug abuse, crime, and homelessness has gotten too soft. Also, download and listen to I've Got a Secret with Robin McGraw with guest organizational psychologist and best-selling author Dr. Benjamin Hardy, the world's leading expert on the future self-science to help you live a happier, more productive, and more successful life. Both are available for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or really wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
You're watching Ksee 24, local news that matters.
There's a new energy and dedication in Clovis. Des House is ready to take Clovis safely and boldly into the future while respecting the past.
I'm Des House. I'm prepared to protect our protectors and the Clovis way of life. Clovis first, Clovis always.
We know Rudy Salas. In Sacramento, we paid him over $1 million, and he skipped over 400 votes. When Rudy did show up, he voted for a new tax on prescription drugs that would have drained money from the most vulnerable. Worse, we pay the highest gas prices in the nation, and Rudy voted to stick us with even higher gas prices. Rudy Salas has failed the Central Valley. Rudy Salas is not for us. NRCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
With violent crime in our communities and the cost of gas, food, and medicine rising, we need a leader in the assembly that we can trust to fight for us, not a quitter like Mark Pazin. While murders in Merced County hit an all-time high, Mark shamefully abandoned his post as sheriff, quitting in the middle of a gang crisis to take a fancy Sacramento political gig. We can't trust a politician like Mark Pazin, who already turned his back on us. The stakes are too high.
Celebrate America's men and women of service November 5th at Clausen Motorsports. Join Ksee 24